Hello game gamers, welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Locust. So I want to start off by giving a big thank you to one of my regular viewers who requested that I cover the Locust in an episode of Grokking Battletech. Frank Smedley, this episode is for you, and also a personal shout out to Frank's custom merc unit, the Ghost Lions. May they win many victories in the future with the Locust. All right, so before I get into this, I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. There's also a link to my Teespring store. You can get cool Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. And a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support the channel. All right, so the Locust. Now, the Locust is a light mech. It is one of the unseen mechs, one of the mechs that was based off of one of the designs from one of the anime shows that they had repurposed because they thought they had properly bought the licenses to them, they being FASA way back in the day. And because of some legal issues, they had to not use their likenesses for a while, but then thanks to some redesigns and some wins in some court cases, etc., they are now able to use these mechs again. So now they have gone from being unseen to re-seen. So the Locust was the prototypical light, fast scout mech, run in really quickly, making it difficult to hit it, run in behind enemy lines. That goes all the way back to the Star League era and has a ludicrous, and I do mean ludicrous, number of versions. So I am going to go over quite a few versions of the Locust. I'm going to talk about some of what are my favorite versions for a couple different time periods. I'm going to talk about a couple custom variants I've made for the Locust. I'm going to talk about a particular Mech Warrior I would recommend using in some of my favorite versions of the Locust. And then with one of my favorite versions, I have made a Lance, a 6,000 battle value Lance, to use with one of my favorite versions of the Locust. So we're going to discuss all of that in this episode. So to start with, I want to start with some very old versions of the Locust. I want to go back to the Succession War era versions, the kinds that you were using in original Battletech. So we're going to start with the Lct6m. E is an Echo. Now, this is a very typical loadout for the Locust. It is light, it is fast, it is cheap, it has a decent amount of firepower, but pretty weak armor because it relies more on its speed to stay alive. So this is a Succession War era version. It has a movement of 8-12. Locusts don't generally jump. They usually are very fast, but don't have jump jets. So 12 running for the Succession War era is very, very quick. So for the armor for this Locust, you have 8 armor in the head, which isn't too bad. 10 on the center torso, only 8 on each side torso, which on the side torso, 8 is pretty bad. 4 on the arms, which is really low. 8 for the legs, and only 2 for each rear torso section. Now the thing is, this Locust really does not rely on its armor to stay alive. The 1E really relies on its speed. You're gonna run, kind of keep your distance until you can close in on the rear of the enemy Lance and fire off with its armament of 2 medium lasers and 2 small lasers. Now, it does need to get in pretty close to use those, but like I say, you're going to want to flank and run around and get into the rear with this Locust, because if you come straight at the enemy or slow down with a decent firing arc from one of your enemies at any time, this Locust is dead. It does not have a lot of armor to stay alive. For its heat sinks, it has 10 heat sinking capacity, which is actually really decent because all 4 weapons will only cause 8 heat, and if you run, that means you will not accumulate any heat. This is a very heat efficient mech, and probably one of its better statistics. The other of its best statistics is its battle value. This is an incredibly affordable battle mech at only 553 battle value. Very cheap, very affordable, and one of the best things about it, and actually in the Succession War time period, this is a mech I would definitely use. Now next, we're going to talk about the Locust 1L. L is in Lima. Now, this version of the Locust decided basically they wanted to use some triple strength Myomer to get some more movement out of heating up with this mech. Now, this version of the Locust has 812 movement normally, same as the last one, but with the triple strength my armor heated up, if you have it to at a heat level of 9, you can get 9 walking and 14 running, which is really pretty decent. Now, its armor is basically the same as the other one, 8 on each side torso, 10 on the center torso, 8 on the head, 4 on the arms, 8 on the legs, and 2 on every rear torso section. Now, it does have 10 heat sinks, and the only weapon it has that causes heat is a medium laser, so you are going to have to turn off a bunch of the heat sinks if you want to heat this mech up. You're actually going to, in reality, have to turn off all of your heat sinks for a while until you can get up to heat and then turn some back on. It also, in addition to the medium laser, has 2 machine guns. This mech is even cheaper than the other version, at only 474 battle value, but there's a reason for that. The 2 machine guns and the medium laser is not a lot of firepower at all, even though this one is faster. This one is decent if you're playing mixed arms and need something to hunt down infantry squads that are holding an objective. For that purpose, this mech is good. For general, just mech on mech fighting, especially if you're not playing combined arms, if you're not using infantry, your enemy's not using infantry, this version is not good in those situations. Now, the next version of the Locust we're going to talk about is the 1M. M is in Mike. This is a Star League era version of the Locust, and this changes up its usage quite a bit, but it also makes this version very vulnerable. So, okay, we have the 812 movement, which, as you, I'm sure I've guessed at this point, is pretty standard. We have the 10 single heat sinks for the Star League and Succession War era versions. 10 single heat sinks is pretty standard. But the armor and the weapons on this mech have been changed significantly. So first, the armor. This one trades in its normal metal armor for tissue paper. We have 3 armor on the head, 2 on the center torso, 2 on each side torso, 1 on each arm, 1 on each leg, and 1 on each rear torso section. You could kill this thing with a direct hit from an autocannon 10 to the center torso. Just one autocannon 10. It only has 6 internal structure on the center torso. It literally has more internal structure than armor on every location other than the head. This is a very poorly armored mech. If you ever slow down with this thing and give your opponent a clear shot at it, you're dead. If your opponent gets a lucky shot and rolls high, you're dead. So this is a little bit of a tough one to use. That said, it's not meant to get anywhere near your opponent because it is armed with a medium laser and 2 LRM-5s. Now, with the LRM-5s, you can fire each of them 12 times with the amount of ammo that is in this thing. So what you want to do is you want to run around the flank, keep your distance, run into forests, keep those difficulties to hit your Locust really high because you don't want to get hit even once, and you're just going to taunt your enemy with LRM-5 shots. Now, in reality, most of these shots are only going to do 3 damage apiece. This is a harasser. This is a mech to annoy and destabilize your opponent's lines. Try to get them to try to shoot at it, realizing it has literally no armor. However, it's not going to do a lot of damage on its own. Its one big saving grace, though, is it is only 424 battle value, which is incredibly affordable. I do know there are lots of people that like to take entire lances of Locust because they can take them so affordably, and they'll take them in addition to a second lance of larger mechs. Even in a size game that normally you would only have 1 lance of mechs in, like a 6,000 battle value game, you might be able to fit like 4 Locusts and then a small-ish lance of other mechs that'll include some medium mechs in it. Now, the next version of the Locust I want to discuss is another Star League era version of the Locust. It is the 1S. S is in Sierra. Again, we have the 812 movement. Again, we have those 10 single heat sinks. This one ups the armor a bit from the last version, but not as much as the first couple of versions I discussed. We have 6 armor on the head, 6 on the center torso, 6 on each side torso, 3 on the arms, 6 on the legs, and 2 on each rear torso section. Now, for its armament, this one actually has a pretty decent close range firepower armament. We have a medium laser and 2 SRM-2s. This is not too bad. The best things about this particular version of the Locust is that one, it's incredibly heat efficient. It can fire all of these weapons all day long, so you can, similarly to the first version or two where you want to run around behind your enemy and hit them in the rear and destabilize their line and just keep running and running down the line and hit every one of their mechs in the rear. This can do that too with the medium laser and the two SRM2s. And the other thing that's really great about it is, again, very affordable. 440 battle value, very cheap. Now we have another Star League era version. This is the Locust Lct1v. Now this one goes back up to the armor levels of the first couple of Locusts. We've got 8 in the head, 10 on the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 4 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 2 on every rear torso section. Again, 10 single heat sinks, 8-12 movement. So all that, you know, fairly standard for the first couple of versions of the Locust. But this one has that the same weapon loadout as the version I told you about before that had the triple strength mimer. It has a medium laser and 2 machine guns. So again, this is really just a version for hunting infantry when playing combined arms. Next, I want to talk about the Lct3v. This is a kind of a slightly upgunned version of the last one. This one has 2 machine guns but 2 medium lasers, which means its firepower is a little more decent when dealing with mechs. Its armor is 8 in the head, 6 on the side torsos, 10 on the center torso, 4 on the arms, 6 on the legs, 2 on every rear torso section, and 10 single heat sinks. Still good at hunting infantry, but also a better punch with those 2 medium lasers for running around and harassing enemy mechs or vehicles. Okay, now we're going to jump to some of the later time periods when we get the more advanced technologies added in. So the next version I want to talk about is the Lct1 V as in Victor 2. Now this is a periphery version of the Locust from the Civil War time period, so this is a significant time jump for this one. Now it is still 8-12 movement. We still have only 10 single heat sinks because generally speaking the Locust, a lot of the versions, even later versions, don't really need the double heat sinks. The armor's not bad. We've got the 8 in the head, the 10 on the center torso, 8 on the side torsos, 4 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 2 on each rear torso section. So that pretty standard armor from the ones that had better armor coverage for a Locust anyway. But the weapons loadout is where this one rocks. This one has a really good, what I would refer to as a disposable hero weapon loadout. Something you see with a lot of periphery mechs. It is loaded up with rocket launchers. So it has 1 medium laser, the only sustainable weapon on this mech, and 4 rocket launcher 10s. Now, rocket launcher 10s work like LRMs without minimum range, and they can only be fired once. They don't have ammo. Each rocket launcher is loaded with its single shot, and you fire it, and you're done. So what you want to do with this is you want to run around flank, get in the rear, come into a mech that you know, you really need to tear off that rear armor on and unload with all 4 rocket launcher 10s when you have a really good chance to hit with most of them, and tear up that rear armor so that someone else can come in for the kill later. Especially if you're hitting a heavy or even assault mech, tear up a lot of that rear armor, and then someone later on could come in and capitalize on the weakened rear armor of that mech. This is actually a really decent harasser at 568 battle value. Of course, once you fire off all those rocket launcher 10s, it's just a running medium laser for the rest of the game. But if you can capitalize on hitting someone when they just walk and aren't moving that fast, and you can make it really likely to hit its target when you fire off all those rocket launcher 10s, it can be really worthwhile. Now, next we have an upgraded LRM-5 Locust. This is the Lct3d. This is a very affordable battle mech at 436 battle value. It's got 2 LRM-5s and nothing else. So this one wants to keep its distance from the enemy, but you know, to stay alive, it relies on its speed, but it's got better armor than the other version, which remember had just tissue paper for armor. This one's got 5 armor on the center torso, 7 on the head, 5 on each side torso, 4 on each arm, 5 on the legs, 1 on each side rear torso, and 2 on the center rear torso. This is still not great armor, I have to say, and it was able to fit it in by upgrading to ferrofibrous armor to reduce the weight of its armor. It's still less than even the standard Locust, but it's definitely an upgrade for hosting those 2 LRM-5s if you want to do that style of harassing at a distance while flanking your enemy lance. Next, I want to talk about the Lct3m. Now, this version of the Locust is a clan invasion era. This one still has 10 single heat sinks. It has the 8-12 movement. Its armor is on the lower side for the Locust, but not the terrible, pathetic tissue paper of that one version I was talking about earlier. But it has 6 armor on the center torso, 7 on the head, 6 on each side torso, 4 on the arms, 7 on the legs, 2 on each rear torso section, respectively. Now for weapons, this baby has a medium laser, 2 small lasers in the right arm, another 2 small lasers in the left arm, and an anti-missile system to help keep you alive if people want to take pot shots at you with missiles at a distance. This is a really good mech actually for running around the flank, getting into the rear, coming up and unloading on someone with those 4 small lasers and the medium laser in the rear. Never slow down again with this, because if you slow down, you will die. With Locust, speed is life. You must never stop, never stand still. The next one is the Locust Lct6m. Now this version, again, has the 812 movement, the 10 single heat sinks. It's got kind of lower end of armor here. It's got 7 on the head, 5 on every front torso section. It's got 4 on the arms, 5 on the legs, 2 on the center rear torso, and 1 on each rear side torso. Not very good there. But it has a medium laser and a streak SRM2 in the right arm with another streak SRM2 in the left arm. Now the streak SRMs are great because if you hit with them, you hit with both of those missiles. Obviously this is very similar to one of the Succession War variants that we talked about earlier, but upgraded with streaks. So this is not bad, but the armor, again, taking the hit to the armor is a bit of a problem. It will be a little harder to keep the 3S alive. Okay, so the next version I want to talk about is the 5M. Now, the 5M I like a lot. This is a really good version. This is actually one of my favorites. We've made it to one of my favorite versions, and specifically, this is my favorite version for playing in the Civil War time period. Now, for the Civil War time period, I personally think this one is great. So you have, first off, 12-18 movement. So we have upped the speed to make this thing even more survivable, even faster, even better at getting around the flanks and rear. We still have the 10 single heat sinks. The armor is not bad. We have 9 on the head, 9 on the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 6 on each arm, which is a bit of an upgrade for a lot of the versions of the Locust, 8 on the legs. We have 3 on the center rear torso, 2 on each rear side torso. But the weapons are where this baby shines, because it has an ER medium laser and 4, count them, 4 ER small lasers. So this one is one of my favorites for outflanking your enemy, running along and getting in the rear of multiple of your enemy mechs and unloading on them with all of those ER small lasers, which actually get a not abysmal range, unlike the regular small lasers. They actually can hit up to about 5 hexes away at long range, 4 hexes at medium range, which is not too bad. And the ER medium laser, that can hit all the way up to 12 hexes away. So you can harass with the ER medium laser while you're trying to get around, and then when you get around, you can close in and try to rip off the rear armor of your enemy. It's a little more expensive than a lot of the other versions of the Locust we've been discussing. It's at 719 battle value, but it's worth it. I like this version of the Locust a lot. Now the next one we're going to talk about is the Locust Lct5t. Now the 5T, again, has the 812 movement of a lot of standard Locusts. This is a Jihad era version. It has 10 single heat sinks. We've got 9 armor in the head, 9 in the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 2 on each side rear torso, 3 on the rear center. Not bad for a Locust. The weapons loadout is kind of interesting. We have an ER medium laser in the center torso, and then we have 3 light machine guns on the right arm with a light machine gun array, another 3 light machine guns on the left arm with a light machine gun array, which means that this is kind of an inner sphere version of the Piranha with all those machine guns. This is going to absolutely destroy infantry units, and actually with 6 light machine guns, getting around the rear of somebody and getting to just unload on their rear with all these light machine guns, it can be really horrifying to a lot of enemies, because you do have the chance of just chipping away all that rear armor. And plus, with all those machine guns, this is a very heat efficient mech, because remember, machine guns cause 0 heat. And 6 machine guns is a lot better than, say, 2 machine guns like I was talking about in some of the earlier versions. Now the next version of the Locust I want to discuss is the Lct5v. This is another Jihad era version. This one has 2 rocket launcher 10s and 2 ER medium lasers. It's got the 812 movement. It's got 10 double heat sinks, so it can actually be very heat efficient, and its armor is 9 on the head, 9 on the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, and 3 armor in the center rear torso with 2 on each rear side torso section. Now, this version is pretty good. I like the other one with the 4 rocket launcher 10s better, but at least with this one, once you fire off the 2 rocket launcher 10s, the 2 ER medium lasers means it still has some bite for the rest of the game. It's not as much of a one-trick pony, and I have to respect that. It's just that, you know, 2 ER medium lasers are decent. They're just not game-winning, so it's still not going to be amazing for the rest of the game. I'd rather actually have the one big trick of the 4 rocket launchers. Now, the next version I want to discuss is the 5W. This is a version with mask to speed it up. Now, I really like putting mask on light, fast mechs. You don't worry as much about damaging them because they're really cheap mechs anyway. And making fast mechs faster is always great. So this has a 914 movement, but if you activate the mask, you can run at 18, which is fantastic. It has 10 double heat sinks to keep it cool. And then it's got 10 armor in the center torso, 9 in the head, 8 on each side torso, 5 on each arm, 8 on each leg, 2 on every one of the rear torso sections, respectively. Now, its weapon system is pretty interesting. We have an improved C3 CPU, so this is obviously a mech designed for an improved C3 network. We have 2 ER medium lasers for harassing, and we have a tag for spotting for those other mechs in the C3 network with LRMs that are firing indirectly. If you are specifically building a mech around this for a C3, an improved C3 network with some LRM missile boat mechs, this can be absolutely deadly with how much it improves the chances for those missiles to hit home. The next version I want to talk about is another Jihad era version of the Locust, is the LCT5W2. Now, this version has 914 movement, but with the mask that this one has as well, it can get all the way up to 18 movement. It's got 10 double heat sinks. Its armor is 9 in the head, 10 on the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 5 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 2 on each of the rear torso sections, respectively. And again, we have a tag. This one has a C3 slave unit, so this one's made for a C3 network, but not an improved C3 network. It has a Guardian ECM suite, so when it runs up close to spot with the tag, you can mess with enemy electronic warfare components like Artemis 4s or enemy C3 networks, and it has 2 ER medium lasers. I actually like this version better than the 5W, the 5W2, because the Guardian ECM suite is a nice little added touch. It does kind of everything that the 5W does, but a little more. But again, you'll have to use it with a regular C3 network rather than a C3I network, which of course is a little bit of a downgrade in that regard. And then finally, I'm going to talk about my favorite version of the Locust for the Jihad era. I don't generally play Jihad era, but this is one of those mechs that would make me want to do so. So this is the Locust Lct6m. Now, this is a 1421 movement mech. So 14 walking, 21 running. However, it has mask. And with its mask system, it can go up to 28 hexes. That means, if you're paying attention at home, this is a mech capable of getting the full +6 difficulty to hitting it with its maximum speed, which is insane. It has 10 double heat sinks to keep it cool. It's got 9 armor in the head, 9 in the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 6 in the arms, 8 on the legs, 2 on each rear side torso, 3 on the rear center torso. Keep in mind though, that armor is really 100% not what you were relying on to keep this mech alive. It's all about that speed, +6 difficulty to hit a target. Keep in mind, is insane. A normal average inner sphere Mech Warrior has a gunnery skill of 4. +6 means that on the 2 dice, you've upped that from a 4 or better to hit to now a 10 or better to hit. Now, if that Mech Warrior just walked, that's now an 11 or better to hit. If you are at medium range, it is impossible to hit this mech. Yeah, so this version of the Locust is really the definition of speed is life. Now for firepower, it has 2 ER medium lasers and an ER small laser. Now this is not amazing, but it is enough to harass with. You can use this mech to harass, run around the rear, shoot the enemies in the rear, just run back and forth, shooting at them in the rear, destabilizing their lines while your bigger mechs are coming forward and hitting them in the front. Now, this speed does come with the downside of making this mech rather expensive for battle value. It's at 956 battle value, which is way more expensive than a lot of the other versions of the Locust, especially a lot of my favorite versions of the Locust, other than this one, because this is one of my favorite versions of the Locust. But I do think this battle value is worth it because this mech is so hard to kill, and if you get some of your enemies to turn around and try to shoot at you while you're running at top speed and being incredibly hard to hit, it'll be completely worthwhile, especially because they'll be showing their rear to the rest of your lance that is walking forward. Now, for my custom versions, I decided to make custom versions of the Lct6m. Now, the 5M was the one I talked about before. That was one of my favorite versions from the Civil War time period. The thing was, I wanted to take that and I wanted to add in some of my favorite elements from some of the other versions of the Locust, some of my other favorite versions of the Locust, to bring those into the Civil War time period. So specifically, I was looking to try to get a tag on it because I really like the versions of the Locust with the tag. Also, I did want to add mask to it because I really like the versions of the Locust with mask, like the 6M. So both of these custom versions of the Locust were designed by my own personal mech design firm, KIWF, named after the last initial of its 4 founding members, but affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans. And they were going for the design philosophy of let's take a really good Locust and arm it with a tag and give it a mask to make it even faster in the Civil War time period. So the first one is the Locust Lct6m KIWF. So this version of the Locust, we have kept a lot of the basic stats from the 5M the same, but we have upgraded it in a few specific areas. So it has 12-18 movement, so that's 12 walking, 18 running, but with the mask, it can go as fast as 24 hexes, 24 movement, which is very good for the Civil War time period. Its armor is 9 in the head, 9 in the center torso, 8 on each side torso, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 3 on the center rear, and 2 on each rear side torso. We have 10 double heat sinks to keep it quite cool. And then for its armament, we have 1 ER medium laser, 3 ER small lasers, and a tag. So I had to reduce its firepower a bit to fit the tag in, but I think it's worthwhile because that tag on this mech is going to make this able to do double duty and really hit pretty hard by getting those semi-guided missiles from the LRM missile boats in the back to hit the target, and that is pretty freaking awesome. However, the one downside of this is it wound up being a little bit high on the battle value, a little higher than I would have wanted for this particular mech. It got to 788 battle value. I know that's cheaper than the 6M, but it feels expensive for the Civil War time period to me. And I decided I wanted to do a second version because I figured the client would have said with these plans, hey, this is good, but can we make a cheaper one? So the cheaper version is the Lct6m KIWF2. So one of the things we did with this was we upped the speed a little bit. We got it at up to 1320, and that is 26 with the mask system. We did maintain the mask. For the armor, we have 9 on the center torso, 8 on the side torsos, 9 on the head, 6 on the arms, 8 on the legs, 3 on the center rear torso, 2 on each of the side center torsos. We dropped the heat sinks back down to 10 single heat sinks. And for the armament, we have an ER small laser, an ER medium laser, and a tag. So this is it is a significant downgrade in the firepower. We only have 1 ER small laser. We've maintained the tag, but this also gets the battle value all the way down to 717 battle value, making it a much more affordable build. I actually quite like both of these. I think these would be great additions to lances that have a lot of LRM units that aren't using Artemis 4, that are wanting to use indirect fire with semi-guided missiles. I think both of these would work really well for that. But I'm not going to be using them today for my lance. So the mech I chose to use for the lance, I decided I wanted to make a Jihad era lance because I don't do too many of them. It's a little outside my normal comfort zone, but I'm trying to expand into later time periods. So I'm going to be using the 6M, the one that I talked about last, the one with the possible 28 movement points when it is using its mask system. It's got the 2 ER medium lasers, the ER small laser. It's ludicrously fast, and it's got 10 double heat sinks. I really like this version a lot. So for the Mech Warrior, what I decided to go with for this one is the idea here is you're playing a Jihad era 6,000 battle value lance, and your opponent agrees to use Mech Warriors but wants to keep the cost low, so they say we'll just use 2 cost Mech Warriors. So I chose Locust Lct. Now, Locust Lct is a 2-cost Mech Warrior. Their stats are just average. They have 4 gunnery and 5 piloting. Now, the reason for this is you're putting in the smallest mech in your lance, but a mech that is going to be very survivable because of how fast it is. But when your opponent gets to improve the stats of one of their Mech Warriors equal to yours, they're going to suddenly be like, oh, I don't actually get to improve the stats at all. So it's kind of a denial choice in that. Whereas your opponent might pick a much better statted Mech Warrior that only costs 2, and put them in their most valuable mech, and then you can borrow their stats, because you always get to borrow the stats of your opponent's Mech Warrior to put in one of your mechs and put it on your biggest mech. So this is a little bit of a tricksy choice, a little bit of a tricksy way to do it. Now, Locust Lct has the ability Maneuvering Ace, which means that you can make lateral shifts, and you can also apply a -1 modifier to the piloting skill rolls to avoid skidding. This means that you essentially make this incredibly fast mech even better at maneuvering, especially if you're running in cities, because you have to worry about falling down if you make turns and keep moving on city streets. But specifically, the ability to make lateral shifts is great on any terrain. So yeah, it makes it even more maneuverable, and again, denies your opponent a stat boost for one of their mechs. So the lance I'm going to make for this version of the Locust with this Mech Warrior in it is I'm going to be doing a command lance. Now, I've done a lot of command lances before. It is one of my favorite versions of the force building rules from the Battletech Clan Invasion box set here, the book that came in there, because its abilities are so strong. But I'm doing it for kind of a different purpose. A lot of the times when I have made command lances, it's to be able to use the abilities of the command lance, specifically the combat intuition, to use jumping mechs to jump in behind enemies before they get to move and hit them while they're sitting duck and rip off all their rear armor, usually for things like city fighting or for canyon fighting. But this is not that. This is a lance designed to be used in open terrain, plains, hills, rolling hills, a little bit of forest around, but not a lot of terrain, lots of open space. And I'm going to use the lance for a different purpose, the lance ability for a different purpose. Now, the requirements for the command lance is that at least 1 unit in this formation must be designated as the command unit. I'm actually going to designate Locust as the command unit. 50% of the units must have one of the following unit roles: sniper, missile boat, skirmisher, or juggernaut. I have a sniper and a missile boat. And then 1 additional unit in the star must be a brawler, striker, or scout. I have a striker in here, so I fulfill all of the requirements. Now, for the abilities, prior to the beginning of play, 2 of the non-command units in this formation receive the combat intuition ability. Now, for combat intuition, there are 2 basic ways to use it. One of the ways is that you can pick a target and you can do all of your movement, firing, and close combat before that unit even activates, so it doesn't get any extra difficulty for its movement. That's the main way I'm going to be recommending to use it for this lance. And the other way is you could do everything after that unit moves. You can make sure to delay and wait to see where that unit goes before doing your movements and attacks. Now, each time you use the combat intuition ability, you have to use it on the turn before you plan to use it. And when you use it, you immediately have to take a damage to your Mech Warrior, which means there is a risk. Taking damage to your Mech Warrior is nothing to sneeze at, so you are going to save it for the specific times when you really think you can do the most damage. The idea with this lance is that you're going to have the Locust running around and harassing while the other mechs come up the center. I'm going to explain a little more on how I would recommend to use the ability with this lance after I explain everything that's in the lance. But also, it's just one other final note: as long as Locust can stay alive, and with the ridiculous amount of extra modifiers that Locust is going to have for his incredible fast movement in the Locust, he probably will be staying alive, but as long as he's alive, you're going to get to re-roll your initiative once each turn, which is also really awesome. Now, the second mech we have in this lance is the Crusader Crd7W. Now, this is a Crusader, and like all Crusaders, is generally a missile boat. But this is a really cool Jihad-era missile boat. So this has a 4-6 movement. It's got a really decent armor, 9 on the head, 33 on the center torso, 24 on each side torso, 20 on the arms, 27 on the legs. On the rear, we have 7 on the rear center and 6 on each side rear. We have 10 double heat sinks, and then we have, count them, 2 multi-missile launcher 5s, 2 multi-missile launcher 9s, all with Artemis 4 fire control systems. So this mech is going to walk forward, firing off LRMs out of the multi-missile launchers, doing a bit of damage here and there until it gets in range for its SRMs, and then it's going to be firing off a ludicrous amount of damage through these SRMs from the multi-missile launcher 9s and multi-missile launcher 5s. And it's gonna find the holes made by other mechs in this lance that punch big holes for it. I'm gonna get to that in a moment. But yeah, this is a really cool version of the Crusader, and this is gonna be one of the reasons why your enemy's not gonna want to turn around to shoot at your Locust, because this thing's gonna be firing all these multi-missiles at the enemy. Now, next, to punch the holes for the multi-missiles to find, we have the Marauder 2 MAD 4K. Now, the MAD 4K is a 3.5, 300-ton beast of a mech with 9 armor on the head, 46 armor on the center torso, 32 on each side, 34 on the arms, 42 on the legs, 16 on the rear center torso, 10 on each rear side torso. And this baby is got one of the most impressive armaments of any inner sphere mech in this time period. It has a Gauss rifle on the right torso. It has a heavy PPC on each arm and an ER small laser on each arm. Now, with those 2 heavy PPCs and the Gauss rifle, this thing can punch 15-point damage in single sections 3 times. Now, the idea here is that you're going to be using the combat intuition ability to target light fast mechs that try to get around you, to rip them apart with this early game. Later game, when you're punching holes in the slower mechs with this, you're going to use the combat intuition with the Crusader to make sure all of its missiles hit to find the holes you have been punching. And finally, to round out this lance, we have the Panther Pnt 13K, which is a amazingly cool upgraded version of the Panther, specifically because of its using the upgraded, improved jump jets from the Jihad era, which is awesome. It means that it has a movement of 5, 8, 8. That is 5 walking, 8 running, 8 jumping. Now, I don't recommend ever using any movement other than jumping with this unless you lose your jump jets. 8 jumping is insane. It is really maneuverable, and it is going to make it really hard to hurt this mech. It has 10 double heat sinks to try to keep it cool, though it is going to be having a lot of heat buildup on occasion. It has 9 armor on the head, 11 on the center torso, 10 on each side torso, 10 on the arms, 13 on the legs, 4 on the rear center torso, 3 on each rear side torso. And for its weapons, it has a SRM-4 and a plasma rifle, so that in addition to doing 10 points of heat with that plasma rifle, it can do a bit of a heat spike. Because remember, the plasma rifle will cause D6 added heat to whatever enemy it strikes. So it's not a huge amount of heat, but it could be as much as 6 extra heat to a mech that is already struggling with heat. Those 6 extra heat could possibly shut it down or cause an ammo explosion. Really tricksy, really great extra mech to bounce around and harass your enemies and mess with them as the Crusader and the Marauder Mark II walk up the field, and the Locust runs around in the backfield shooting your enemies in their rear armor. There you have it. That is the lance I would make for the Locust Lct6m. What did you guys think of that? What is your favorite version of the Locust? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you'd like to request that I cover a specific mech in an episode of Grokking Battletech, feel free to request it down below. I am trying to cover all of the mechs that were introduced in the Star League era through the Civil War era before moving on, because those are my favorite eras to play. But feel free to request any of the mechs from those time periods. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.